Admiral Park Tae-ho stood on the bridge of the KSS Mugangwa and stared at the message on his screen. He had read it 5 times already. The words did not change. Surrender all colonial territories within 40 standard days or face correction. The message came from the Velan Dominion, a coalition of 6 alien species that ruled over 200 star systems. Humanity had never met them before today. Park Tae-ho was 58 years old. His hair had turned gray during 30 years of service. He had fought pirates near Jupiter. He had stopped a rebellion on Mars. He had buried friends and soldiers on a dozen different worlds. But he had never faced anything like this. Nobody had. The Velan Dominion did not ask for talks. They did not ask for trade. They simply told humanity to give up everything they had built over 300 years of space exploration. 12 star systems, 47 colonies, 8 billion people living among the stars. "Admiral," said Lieutenant Commander Yuna from her station. She was young, maybe 30, with sharp eyes and quick hands. She was the best tactical officer Park Tae-ho had ever worked with. "We have received their fleet data. 200 warships are moving to our New Busan colony." Tae-ho nodded slowly. New Busan was home to 3 million people. It was a mining world, rich in metals that Earth needed. The Velans had chosen it carefully. Destroy New Busan, and humanity would understand their place in the galaxy. "How long until they arrive?" he asked. 18 days, sir." Park Tae-ho walked to the main display. The enemy fleet appeared as red dots moving through space. 200 ships against his 40. Those numbers should have scared him. Instead, he felt something else. Something cold and sharp in his chest. Far away on the Velan command station, High Arbiter Orin watched his fleet depart. Orin was tall, even for his species. His body was covered in hard plates like armor. 4 arms folded across his chest as he studied the reports about humanity. Primitive species. Only 300 years of space travel. No unified government. Tribal conflicts still common. Technology level. Acceptable, but unremarkable. Military strength. Minimal. Orin had fought wars for 400 years. He had conquered 12 species and added them to the Dominion. Every war followed the same pattern. The Dominion showed strength. The weak species surrendered. Order was restored. This was how the galaxy worked. "High Arbiter," said his aide, a smaller creature with thin limbs. "The humans have not responded to our message." "They will," Orin said. "When they see our fleet, they will understand." All species understand strength. But 3 days later, a response came from Earth. It was not a surrender. A human woman appeared on the screen. She wore a formal uniform and spoke calmly. "This is the United Earth Council. We reject your demands. Our colonies belong to our people. We will defend them." Orin tilted his head. This was unexpected. He had studied human military records. Their ships were slower than Velan ships. Their weapons were weaker. Their numbers were smaller. What could they possibly hope to achieve? "Increase fleet speed," Orin ordered. "They will learn faster with a demonstration." On the Mugangwa, Admiral Park Tae-ho gathered his senior officers. They stood around a table covered with star maps and fleet positions. 40 ships, 3 million civilians to protect, 18 days to prepare. "Sir," said one captain, "our simulations show we cannot win a direct battle. Their ships are faster, and their weapons hit harder. If we form a defensive line, they will break through in hours." Park Tae-ho listened quietly. He had run the same simulations. The captain was right. A normal battle would be a massacre. "Eh? Then we will not fight a normal battle," he said. He pulled up records on the display. Not military records. History files. Old Earth history. Wars that happened before humanity ever left their planet. The Velans had fought for 400 years, Park Tae-ho said. They have conquered 12 species. Do you know how long their longest war lasted? Nobody answered. 11 days, he said. They have never fought a war longer than 11 days. They show up with overwhelming force, the enemy surrenders, and it's over. Clean, simple, fast. He looked at each officer. They have never faced an enemy that refused to quit. Lieutenant Commander Yuna leaned forward. What are you suggesting, Admiral? Park Tae-ho smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I've been reading their battle records. The Velans fight like they're playing a game with rules. They form lines. They exchange fire. The weaker side surrenders. They don't understand any other way. He pulled up more images. Burning cities. Soldiers hiding in forests. Ships exploding against enemy hulls. Humans have fought wars for 10,000 years, he said. We have burned our own cities rather than let enemies take them. We have hidden in mountains for decades. We have crashed our own planes into enemy ships. We have done things that no sane species would do, he paused, because we learned something a long time ago. War is not a game. War is survival, and we will do anything to survive. The officers were quiet. We're not going to form a line and let them destroy us, Park Tae-ho continued. We're going to scatter, hide, strike from the shadows. Retreat when they're strong, and attack when they're weak. We're going to make them bleed for every kilometer of space. And when they think they've won, we're going to hit them again. Captain Yuji, commander of the destroyer Hansen, spoke up. Admiral, this strategy? It could take months. Years even. The cost will be enormous. Yes, Park Tae-ho agreed. It will. That's exactly what they won't expect. He stood straight. They came here thinking they would teach us a lesson. They're about to learn that they picked a fight with a species that has spent its entire history fighting itself. We're very, very good at war, and we don't surrender. The next 16 days were chaos. Ships moved to hidden positions behind moons and asteroids. Civilians were evacuated to underground shelters. Mining equipment was modified into weapons. Everything that could fight was prepared to fight. On the day the Velan fleet arrived, found the space around New Busan empty. No defensive line. No fleet waiting to surrender. Fleet Commander Tarn, leading the Velan assault, was confused. Where are they? He demanded. His sensors showed nothing. Just empty space, a few asteroids and a quiet planet below. Then his sensors screamed warnings. Ships were appearing everywhere. Behind asteroids, from inside debris fields, rising from the planet's atmosphere, 40 human ships scattered like ghosts, all firing at once. Admiral Park Tae-ho's voice came through on all frequencies, calm and steady. You think you understand war? Humanity is about to change your definition forever. Hey, the Battle of New Busan had begun. The first Velan warship exploded in a ball of white fire. Fleet Commander Tarn watched it happen from his flagship and could not believe his eyes. The humans had fired from 6 different directions at once. His ship had been caught completely by surprise. Return fire, Tarn shouted. All ships engaged the enemy. But where was the enemy? The human ships were not staying still. They fired their weapons and then moved. They hid behind asteroids. They flew into the planet's atmosphere where Velan sensors could not follow. When Tarn sent ships to chase them, other human ships appeared and attacked from behind. This was not how wars were supposed to work. Admiral Park Tae-ho stood on the bridge of the Mugangwa and watched the battle unfold. His ship had taken damage. One engine was dead. Smoke filled the lower decks, but they were still fighting. Hansen reports direct hit on enemy cruiser. Lieutenant Commander Yuna announced. Enemy ship disabled. Tell Captain Yuji to pull back and reload, Park Tae-ho ordered. Destroyers Olsen and Pohang begin attack run on their supply ships. The Velan fleet was larger and stronger, but they were confused. They had expected the humans to line up and fight like every other species. Instead, the humans attacked and ran away. They targeted supply ships instead of warships. They fired missiles and then hid. It was like fighting smoke down on the surface of New Busan. Sergeant Major Kim Da-soo led his soldiers through the underground tunnels. He was 45 years old with a face like carved stone. Before joining the military, he had been a history teacher. He knew every guerrilla war ever fought on Earth. They're landing troops near the capital. His radio crackled. 2,000 soldiers. Heavy weapons. Kim Da-soo nodded. 2,000 Velen soldiers against his 800 defenders. Normally, that would be a death sentence. But Kim Da-soo had no plans to fight normally. "Pull everyone out of the capital," he ordered. "Leave nothing useful behind. Collapse the main roads. Poison the water supply." His lieutenant, a young woman named Cho Yoon, stared at him. "Sir, the capital is our largest city. If we abandon it, the city is just buildings," Kim Da-soo said. "Buildings can be rebuilt. People cannot. We're not going to defend walls. We're going to defend lives." The Velen ground troops landed expecting a battle. Instead, they found an empty city. The humans had left, taking everything valuable with them. Food, medicine, weapons, vehicles, all gone. Even the power plants had been destroyed. Velen Commander Roast led his soldiers through the silent streets. His forearms held weapons ready, but there was nothing to shoot. Where had the humans gone? Then the ground exploded. Kim Da-soo had buried bombs under the streets. When the Velen troops walked over them, they detonated. Buildings collapsed on soldiers. Bridges fell into rivers. The empty city had become a trap. Fall back. Commander Ross screamed, "Fall back to the landing zone." But the humans were waiting there too. They appeared from tunnels and sewers, fired their weapons, and disappeared again. Velen soldiers fell one by one to enemies they could not see. In the mining district, Dr. Hanmera worked without rest. She was a civilian scientist, 32 years old, with gentle hands that had spent years studying rocks and minerals. Now those hands were building weapons. "The laser is ready," her assistant reported. "But doctor, this mining laser was designed to cut through asteroids. It's not meant to be a weapon." Hanmira looked at the massive laser mounted on a cargo ship. "Everything is a weapon, if you use it right," she said. Pointed at their ships and fire, the cargo ship flew straight at a Velen cruiser. The Velens did not shoot it down because their computers classified it as a civilian vessel. When the mining laser fired, it cut through the cruiser's hull like a hot knife through butter. Dr. Hanmira smiled grimly. "Load another ship. We have 12 more lasers." Back in space, Fleet Commander Tarn was beginning to panic. His fleet had lost 30 ships in 6 hours. 30 ships. Against an enemy with less than half his numbers? This was impossible, Commander, his aide reported. "The humans are requesting communication." Tarn's eyes brightened. Finally, they were ready to surrender. "Accept the message." A human face appeared on screen. It was a cargo ship captain, an old man with white hair. His ship was damaged and burning. He was clearly going to die, but he was smiling. "You want our colony?" The old man said, "Come and take it." Then his ship accelerated directly at Tarn's flagship. "Shoot him down." Tarn screamed. His weapons fired, but too late. The human ship struck the flagship at full speed. The reactor exploded. Fleet Commander Tarn died instantly. He was killed by a man who had chosen to become a weapon himself. High Arbiter Arn received the news 3 days later. The demonstration fleet had been defeated. 100 ships destroyed or damaged beyond repair. Fleet Commander Tarn was dead. The colony of New Busan still belonged to humans. For a long moment, Oren was silent. His aide waited nervously. "How?" Oren finally asked. "How did they do this?" His aide pulled up footage from the battle. Ships attacking from hidden positions, soldiers appearing from underground, civilian vessels turned into weapons, a captain ramming his own ship into the enemy. "They don't fight like any species we've encountered," the aide said. "They use tactics we've never seen. They target supplies instead of soldiers. They destroy their own buildings. They... They sacrifice themselves." Oren watched a recording of the old cargo captain smiling before his death. He had known he was going to die, and he had smiled. "What are these creatures?" Oren whispered. His aide had no answer. On New Busan, Admiral Park Tae-ho walked through the ruined streets of the capital. The battle was over, but the cost had been terrible. 18 ships lost. 3,000 soldiers dead. The city was half destroyed. Sergeant Major Kim Dae-soo met him near the central square. Both men were covered in dust and blood. "We won," Kim Desu said. But they'll come back. With more ships, more soldiers. Park Tae-ho nodded. I know. And when they do, we'll be ready. He looked up at the sky, where the stars were beginning to appear. They thought this would be easy. They thought we would surrender. Now they know the truth. What truth, Admiral? Park Tae-ho's eyes were hard. That we don't fight to win. We fight to make the enemy wish they had never started. We fight to make victory cost more than they're willing to pay. He took a deep breath. This war has just begun. And before it ends, the whole galaxy will know what humanity is capable of. Somewhere in the ruins, a radio played old Korean music. Soldiers sat in the rubble, eating cold rations and laughing at jokes. They had just survived the worst battle of their lives, and tomorrow might bring worse. But they were still here. Still fighting. Still human. And that was something the Velans had never faced before. 6 months had passed since the Battle of New Busan. The war had spread across 3 star systems. Humanity was losing ground, but they refused to stop fighting. High Arbiter Oren stared at the reports on his desk. It committed 500 more ships to the war. He had sent 50,000 ground troops. And still, the humans fought. Every world they lost, they burned behind them. Every battle they fought, they made the Dominion pay in blood. Observer Vel sat quietly in the corner of Oren's office. Vel was not from the Dominion. He came from the Marin Collective, a neutral group of historians who recorded galactic events. The Dominion had invited him to document what should have been a quick conquest. Instead, Vel had witnessed something that would change his understanding of the universe. Your thoughts? Oren asked, without looking up. Vel considered his words carefully. I've observed 47 wars in my career. I have seen empires rise and fall. But I have never seen anything like this. What do you mean? The humans are losing, Vel said. They have lost 4 colonies. Their fleet is half destroyed. By all logic, they should surrender. Any rational species would. But they don't. No. Vel leaned forward. I watched recordings from the Battle of New George last week. Human destroyer, badly damaged, engines failing, weapons empty. Do you know what the captain did? Oren was silent. He ordered his crew to abandon ship. Then he flew his vessel directly into a Velan troop carrier. 3,000 of your soldiers died because one human decided his life was worth less than the damage he could cause. Vel's voice was quiet. They're not fighting to survive. High Arbiter. They're fighting to hurt you. They're willing to destroy themselves to do it. Far away on Earth, Ambassador Kong Yunbai prepared for the most important meeting of her life. She was 60 years old, with silver hair, and a calm voice that had ended dozens of diplomatic crises. Now she had a different job. Break the Velan coalition from the inside. The Dominion was made of 6 species. Only 2 of them actually wanted this war. The others had joined because they thought it would be quick and profitable. Yunbai intended to show them how wrong they were. She met secretly with representatives from the Torak and the Nissan, 2 species who had begun questioning the war. They sat in a small room on a neutral station, far from Dominion space. You've seen the cost reports, Yunbai said. The Dominion has spent more resources on this war than on their last 5 conquests combined. We're only 6 months in. The Torak representative, a thin being with blue skin, made a worried sound. We joined the Dominion for trade benefits. This war provides no benefits. It provides nothing but death, Yunbai agreed. But I'm not here to convince you to fight against the Dominion. I'm here to offer you something better. She placed a data chip on the table. Trade agreements, technology sharing, cultural exchange. Everything you joined the Dominion for, but without the war? The Nissan representative picked up the chip carefully. You want us to leave the coalition? I want you to consider your options, Yunbai said. The Dominion started this war expecting victory in days. How many more years are you willing to pay for? The representatives exchanged looks. Seeds of doubt had been planted. Meanwhile, in Dominion territory, General Baek Sung led his soldiers through enemy space. They called themselves the Ghost Division. They had been operating behind enemy lines for 4 months. Baek Sung was 50 years old, with a face covered in scars. He had grown up on Mars during the rebellion there. He had learned that the best way to beat a stronger enemy was to never let them rest. His division had attacked 17 supply depots. They had destroyed communication stations. They had freed human prisoners from Velen camps, and they had never been caught. Tonight, they had a special mission. "Target is ahead," whispered his second-in-command, Captain Moonsori. "Velen food storage facility. Supplies for 10,000 soldiers." Beaksong smiled. "And let's make sure those 10,000 soldiers go hungry." They moved through the darkness like shadows. Velen's security never saw them coming. By the time alarms sounded, the facility was already burning. Beaksong stood before a camera and recorded a message. Behind him, the fire illuminated his soldiers eating Velen rations. "Thanks for dinner," he said cheerfully, holding up a Velen food package. "We'll be seeing you again soon." The video spread across the galaxy within hours. Humans deep in enemy territory, mocking the Dominion while eating their food. It was not just an attack, it was humiliation. Observer Vel watched the video in his quarters. He had been studying humans for 6 months now. He had read their history. He had watched their entertainment. He had spoken to human prisoners. What he had learned terrified him. Humans did not just fight with weapons. They fought with everything. Economics, psychology, culture, information. They turned every part of their existence into a weapon. And they had been doing it for thousands of years. Vel began writing a report. Not for the Dominion, but for the neutral governments of the galaxy. "The human species represents an unprecedented type of threat," he wrote. "They do not engage in war as we understand it. To them, war is not a limited conflict between military forces. It is a total commitment of their entire society. They convert their economy to produce weapons. They use information to break enemy morale. They sacrifice their own lives as a tactic." He paused, then continued. "Most concerning is their psychological adaptation to suffering. In every culture I have studied, prolonged war causes despair. Soldiers lose hope, civilians demand peace. But humans respond differently. Suffering strengthens them. Loss motivates them. They sing songs about their dead and use those songs to inspire the living." Vel stared at his words. Then he added one final warning. "Do not provoke this species. They have industrialized suffering. They have turned pain itself into a weapon. Any species that threatens their survival will face something they cannot understand. An enemy that grows stronger the more you hurt them." On the Velen homeworld, protests began in the streets. Citizens demanded to know why the war was taking so long. Why had so many ships been lost? Why were their soldiers dying for a planet they had never heard of? High Arbiter Orin watched the protests from his tower. For the first time in 400 years, he felt something he did not recognize. Later, he would realize it was fear. On Earth, Admiral Park Tae-ho received reports from all fronts. The war was not going well, for colonies lost, half the fleet destroyed, millions displaced, but the enemy was bleeding too. And unlike the Dominion, humanity was not tired yet. Message from Ambassador Kong, reported Lieutenant Commander Yuna. "The Torak and Neeson are withdrawing from the coalition." Park Tae-ho allowed himself a small smile. 2 down, for 2 go. Admiral Yuna said quietly, "We've lost so much. Do you really think we can win this?" Park Tae-ho looked out at the stars. "Winning isn't the goal, Yuna. The goal is to show the galaxy what it costs to fight us. To make every species in the Dominion wake up each morning and think, is this worth it? Is destroying humanity worth what we're losing?" He turned to face her. "They have bigger ships, more soldiers, better technology, but we have something they don't. We have 10,000 years of practice at war. We've been fighting since before we left our caves. The one thing we've learned is simple. War isn't about winning. It's about making the enemy decide that losing you is better than beating you." Somewhere in the darkness of space, the Ghost Division prepared for their next attack. Ambassador Kong Yun-bai arranged another secret meeting. Observer Vel sent his warning to neutral governments. The galaxy was watching, and humanity was just getting started. 2 years into the war, humanity attacked. Nobody expected it. The Dominion had been pushing forward for months, taking colony after colony. Humans were supposed to be on the edge of defeat. Instead, Nita unveiled something terrible. Captain Choi Wan sat in the cockpit of his fighter and looked at the faces of his pilots on the screen. 60 men and women, the best pilots humanity had ever trained. They called themselves Sunlight Squadron. None of them expected to come home. "You all know the mission," Choi Wan said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "The Velen shipyards at Korath System produce 40 warships per month. As long as those shipyards exist, the Dominion can replace their losses faster than we can cause them." He pulled up a holographic map. The shipyards were enormous, orbiting a gas giant. Hundreds of defense platforms protected them. Thousands of fighters patrolled the area. "Our job is to destroy those shipyards. Fleet Command estimates will face overwhelming resistance. Most of us won't survive." He paused. "Anyone who wants to leave can do so now. No shame, no judgment." Nobody moved. Choi Wan smiled. "Then let's go change the war." On Earth, Counselor Park Jin stood before the United Earth Council. She was Admiral Park Taeho's daughter, 50 years old, with her father's hard eyes and her mother's sharp mind. For 2 years, she had led humanity's industrial war effort. "The enemy thinks they understand our capabilities," she said. "They believe we're fighting with what we have. They're wrong." Behind her, images appeared on massive screens. Factories covering entire continents. Asteroid mines working around the clock. Orbital stations producing weapons without rest. 2 years ago, when this war began, we had 40 warships. Today, we have 400. 2 years ago, we produced 10 fighters per month. Today, we produce 10 fighters per day. She let the numbers sink in. "We don't have an economy anymore. We have a weapon," the council members murmured in surprise. How had they built so much? "Every factory on Earth has been converted to war production," Park Jin continued. "Every civilian ship has been modified to carry weapons. Every man, woman, and child who can work is working. Not because we forced them, because they chose to." She showed videos of factory workers singing while they assembled missiles. Farmers growing food for soldiers. Children collecting scrap metal to be recycled into weapons. The Dominion thinks war is something armies do. For us, war is something everyone does. Our whole civilization has become a machine designed for one purpose: to hurt the enemy until they stop. Far away in Dominion space, High Arbiter Orin sat alone in his private chamber. Around him were screens showing human history, not military records. Culture, art, stories. He had been studying humans for months, trying to understand them. What he had found disturbed him deeply. A human film played on one screen. Soldiers trapped in a city, surrounded by enemies. They could have surrendered. Instead, they fought for weeks, dying one by one until the last survivor killed himself rather than be captured. And humans called this story inspiring. Another screen showed human music. Songs about wars fought centuries ago. Victories and defeats sung with equal pride. They remembered everything. They forgot nothing. A third screen displayed human books. Stories about apocalypse, nuclear war, alien invasion, environmental collapse. Humans wrote thousands of stories about their own destruction, and in every story, they fought back. "They've been preparing for this," Orin whispered to himself. "For thousands of years, they've been imagining wars like this, telling stories about wars like this, training themselves mentally for wars like this." He pulled up records of human conflicts. The World Wars, Korea, Vietnam, guerrilla campaigns that lasted decades. Resistance movements that refused to die have never stopped fighting, he realized. They fight each other constantly. Over land, over ideas, over resources. They've spent their entire existence perfecting the art of war. His aide entered quietly. "Hi, Arbiter, news from Korath System." Orin already knew. He could see it in his aide's face. The shipyards. "Destroyed, High Arbiter. Human fighters broke through our defenses. We killed most of them, but..." The aide swallowed. They didn't retreat. They didn't try to escape. They flew their damaged ships directly into the shipyards. 60 pilots dead. But the shipyards are gone. Oren closed his eyes. 60 humans had traded their lives for months of production, and they had done it willingly, eagerly. How many survived? He asked. 3 High Arbiter. Their ships were too damaged to crash, so they ejected. Our forces captured them. I want to speak with them. Captain Choi Wan sat in a Velen prison cell. His body was broken. Burns covered his arms. His left eye was gone. But he was alive, and the mission had succeeded. A guard opened his cell door. The High Arbiter wants to see you. Choi Wan laughed. It hurt to laugh, but he did it anyway. He was brought before Oren in the High Chamber. The alien leader was larger than any Velen Choi Huan had seen. For arms, hard plates. Ancient eyes that had seen centuries of war. You destroyed my shipyards, Oren said. You killed yourself to do it. Why? Choi Wan looked up at the massive alien. Even now, broken and captured, he was not afraid. I still don't understand, he said. You think we're sacrificing ourselves because we're desperate? You're wrong. We're sacrificing ourselves because we know something you don't. And what is that? That some things are worth dying for. Choi Wan smiled with what was left of his face. Freedom, family, the future of our species. You've never had to fight for those things. You've never been threatened like this, so you don't understand why we're willing to pay any price. Oren was silent for a long moment. I have studied your history, he finally said. Your species has fought wars for 10,000 years. Killed billions of your own kind. Destroyed your own cities. Why? Because that's who we are. Choi Wan's voice was soft. We're not like you. We don't see war as a tool to achieve goals. For us, war is a test, a trial, a way to find out what we're really made of. He looked directly into Oren's eyes. And we've passed that test over and over again. Every time someone threatened us, we fought. Every time we were supposed to lose, we survived. You thought you were attacking a young, weak species. You were wrong. You woke up the most experienced warriors in the galaxy. Oren dismissed the guards and sat down across from the broken human pilot. 2 of your fellow species in the Dominion have left the coalition, he said. The Torak and the Nissan. 2 more are considering withdrawal. I know. If this war continues, the Dominion will collapse. Everything we built over 400 years? Probably. Is that what you want? To destroy us? Choi Wan shook his head slowly. We don't want to destroy anyone. We just want to be left alone. You came to us. You demanded our surrender. You attacked our homes. His voice hardened. All we did was show you what happens when you threaten humans. That night, Oren addressed his war council. I have spent 2 years trying to understand these creatures, he said. Now I do. We thought we understood war. We were wrong. War to us is a surgical procedure. Quick, clean, final. To humans, war is a state of being. They were born in it. They evolved in it. They have spent their entire existence fighting, and they have become something we cannot match. He looked at each council member. Cannot win this war. Not because we lack strength. Because we lack something humans have, the willingness to lose everything for the chance of victory. They will burn their own worlds. They will sacrifice their own lives. They will fight until the last human is dead. And we cannot match that. The council was silent. What do you suggest? One member finally asked. Oren closed his eyes. We negotiate. On Earth, Admiral Park Tae-ho received word that the Dominion wanted peace talks. Lieutenant Commander Yuna smiled. Admiral, we won. But Park Tae-ho shook his head. Not yet. They need to understand something first. They started this thinking they were teachers, coming to educate a primitive species about power. His eyes were cold. Class isn't over yet. We're going to teach them a lesson they'll never forget. The war was not done. Not until humanity was certain it would never happen again. The 3rd year of the war began with humanity on the attack, Admiral Park Tae-ho led his fleet into Dominion space, not to conquer, not to destroy. To demonstrate, every world they reached, they offered the same terms. Surrender your military bases, and your civilians will not be harmed. Refuse, and watch what humans can do. Most surrendered. The Velen homeworld was the final target. Its orbital defenses were the strongest in the galaxy. Thousands of weapons platforms, hundreds of ships, an army of soldiers waiting on the surface. Park Tae-ho looked at the defenses on his tactical display. His fleet had 400 ships now, but the Velen defenses were still overwhelming. Admiral, Lieutenant Commander Yuna said quietly, "We could bypass this system. Force them to negotiate without attacking their home." Park Tae-ho shook his head. "No, this is where it ends. They started this war from their homeworld. They need to see us here, at their door, so they understand what they provoked." The battle began at dawn by Earth time. Human ships poured into the system, fighting through layers of defense. The Mugangwa led the charge, its hull already scarred from 100 battles. 3 hours into the battle, the ship took a direct hit to its engines. Fire spread through the lower decks. Half the crew was dead. "Admiral," the damage control officer reported, "we cannot continue. We need to withdraw." Park Tae-ho looked at the screens around him. Through the smoke and chaos, he could see the Velen homeworld. Blue and green, like Earth, a world full of people who had never asked for this war. "Broadcast on all frequencies," he ordered. "Human and Velen. Channel open, sir?" Park Tae-ho spoke calmly, even as his ship burned around him. "This is Admiral Park Tae-ho of the Korean Space Force. 3 years ago, you came to us with demands. You told us to surrender or face destruction. We refused. On the Velen homeworld, billions watched the broadcast. In the streets, in their homes, in military command centers, everyone listened to the human admiral speaking from his dying ship. You thought we were weak because we were small. You thought we would break because we suffered. You were wrong. We are humanity. We have been fighting since we crawled from the mud. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars that burned our civilization to ashes. And every time we rose again, behind him, his crew continued working, putting out fires, treating wounded, fighting to keep the ship alive." Soft music played on the bridge speakers. Old Korean songs that Park Tae-ho's grandmother had taught him. "We do not want to destroy you. We never did. We only wanted to live in peace, but you would not allow that. So we showed you what we are, what we have always been, a species that would rather burn than bow." High Arbiter Oren watched the broadcast from his command center. Around him, his officers waited for orders. Should they continue fighting? Should they destroy this damaged ship? But Oren remembered his conversation with Captain Choi Won. He remembered studying human history. He remembered all the warnings he had ignored. "Order all ships to cease fire," he said. His officers stared at him. "High Arbiter. Cease fire." Oren's voice was heavy. "It's over. We lost this war the day we started it. We just didn't know it yet." The guns fell silent. 1 week later, High Arbiter Oren met Admiral Park Tae-ho on neutral ground. The space station where they met was small and bare. No ceremony. No grand halls. Just 2 tired old warriors sitting across a table. Oren studied the human. Park Tae-ho was 61 years old now. His hair was completely white. His hands trembled slightly from nerve damage. His eyes were the eyes of a man who had seen too much death. "Could have destroyed my world," Oren said. "Your fleet was strong enough. Why didn't you?" Park Tae-ho was quiet for a moment. "Because that's not who we are. We fight to survive, not to conquer. If we destroyed your world, we would become what we hate." Oren nodded slowly. "What do you want? Territory? Resources? Reparations?" "No." Oren tilted his head. "Then what?" "I want you to teach your children about us." Park Tae-ho's voice was soft but firm. "I want every species in your dominion to learn about this war. What started it? What happened? What it cost. I want them to remember that humanity asked for nothing but peace, and when peace was denied, we fought until we couldn't be ignored. You want to be remembered? I want the next species thinking about attacking humans to remember what happened to you." Park Tae-ho leaned forward. "War isn't about winning, Arbiter. It's about showing the enemy what victory will cost them. You came to us with 200 ships and demanded our surrender. We showed you that taking our freedom would cost more than you could pay." He paused. "I want the galaxy to know that." The Treaty of Remembrance was signed 3 days later. Humanity gained no territory. They demanded no reparations. They asked for only one thing, that Velen schools teach the history of this war. Every battle, every sacrifice, every human who died refusing to surrender. Observer Vel wrote the final report that would spread across the galaxy. "The humans have taught us a new definition of war," he wrote. "For most species, war is a tool, a means to achieve political or economic goals. But humans understand something deeper. To them, war is a promise. A statement that says, if you threaten our existence, we will make you regret it. Not because we want to fight, because we must," he continued. "They do not see death in battle as defeat. They see it as a price worth paying. Their soldiers smile as they sacrifice themselves. Their civilians work until they collapse. Their leaders fight alongside their troops. They have turned their entire civilization into a weapon, and they have been sharpening that weapon for 10,000 years. His final words would be quoted for centuries. I have seen many species claim they would fight to the last. Only humans mean it." 20 years passed. On a Velen world, a young student asked her teacher a question. "Why do we study human wars? They're so different from us. Why does it matter?" The teacher, an old Velen who had lived through the war, considered his answer carefully. "Because they taught us something important," he said. "They taught us that some species are not conquered. They are only awakened. The humans were peaceful before we attacked them. They might have remained peaceful forever, but we threatened them, and in doing so, we woke something ancient and terrible." He pulled up images from the war. Human ships burning, but still fighting. Soldiers charging into impossible odds. Pilots crashing their vessels into enemy targets. "This is what we woke," he said. "A species that measures victory not in territory gained, but an enemy will broken. A species that would rather destroy itself than submit. We thought we were strong because we had never lost a war. We learned that true strength is being willing to lose everything." On Earth, an elderly Admiral Park Tae-ho walked through a garden. Each flower represented a name. Each name represented a human who had died in the war. Millions of flowers. Millions of names. His granddaughter, a young woman named Park So-young, walked beside him. "Grandfather?" she asked. "Did we win the war?" Park Tae-ho stopped and looked at the flowers around him. So many names. So many people who would never grow old, who would never see their children grow, who had given everything so that humanity could survive. "We didn't win," he said finally. "We survived. And we taught the galaxy to respect us. Is that the same thing?" He smiled sadly. "No. Winning would mean none of this was necessary. Surviving means it was, and we did what we had to." He touched a flower gently. "Every name here is a person who decided that humanity's future was worth more than their own life. They didn't fight because they wanted to win. They fought because they refused to lose." Park So-young looked at the sea of flowers stretching to the horizon. "Do you think it will happen again? Another species attacking us?" Her grandfather was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe," he said. "The galaxy is large. There will always be someone who thinks they can take what they want by force." He looked at his granddaughter with eyes that had seen too much war. "But now they know what we are. They know what it costs to fight us. And maybe, just maybe, that knowledge will make them think twice." High above Earth, ships from a dozen species orbited peacefully. Trade vessels, diplomatic transports. Scientists studying human culture, they had come to understand the species that had changed the galaxy's definition of war. The species that had turned survival into an art form. The species that had looked at overwhelming odds and said, "We refuse to surrender." And in schools across the Dominion, children learned about a small, Young species who had taught an ancient empire a simple lesson: some things are worth dying for. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not weapons, not territory. A lesson written in blood and sacrifice. Some things are worth dying for. And a species that believes that cannot be defeated, it can only be remembered.